Hello everyone, my name is Melissa Egan. Thank you so much for joining me. In this short video, I will be discussing the ideal framework, the approach that Realize has adopted as a way to integrate inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility into our work. So who is Realize? Well, we're a national nonprofit and we aim to foster positive change for people living with HIV and other episodic disabilities by bridging the often separate worlds of HIV, disability, and rehabilitation. We've been leaders in episodic disability work for over a decade. We hold the National Secretariat for the Episodic Disabilities Forum and host the annual National Summit on Episodic Disabilities and Employment. Through our advocacy alongside people with episodic disabilities, this terminology is included in the Accessible Canada Act. This is the first time it has ever appeared in Canadian legislation. Our goal is to improve the daily lives of people living with episodic disability in meaningful ways through our work in research, education, policy, and practice change. So why are we speaking on inclusion and diversity in a disability context? Well, our history comes out of the AIDS pandemic, which disproportionately impacted 2S LGBTQ+ communities, as well as Indigenous, Black, and other racialized communities. This trajectory is different to all other disability organizations across the country, and as such, we've always tried to work from an intersectional perspective. Tammy Yates was named our executive director in 2015. She is the first Black woman in Canada to lead a national organization not only in the HIV sector, but in the national disability sector as well. The racial reckoning of summer 2020 was a watershed moment, and we saw national recognition of the field of equity, diversity, and inclusion in workplaces across Canada. The disability sector has begun to pay attention to this issue in a way it never has done before. So why did we develop the ideal framework? Well, let's look at the breakdown. It is inclusion, diversity, equity, accessibility, leading to belonging. And this is how we go beyond equity, diversity, and inclusion. As the only national organization that sits at leadership tables in both the HIV sector and the disability sector, we noticed that EDI frameworks in the HIV sector often leave out accessibility. And in the disability sector, EDI frameworks often sideline gender identity and sexual orientation. The ideal framework in our minds looks a little bit like this, and it's dedicated to promoting and fostering inclusion and belonging, and also to address issues of discrimination based on race, color, national or ethnic origin, persons who identify as First Nations, Métis, or Inuit with or without status, religion, faith, or spiritual beliefs, language and linguistic origin, age, family, and marital status, sex, gender identity and expression, sexual identity, as well as mental, physical, episodic, or any other type of disability. So how do we situate this within our organization? We begin with asking ourselves these guiding questions, and they are by no means exhaustive, they are evergreen, as we all learn and grow in our understanding of this important issue. We begin by considering inclusion and diversity and ask ourselves, who is at the table or being considered in this process and who isn't? What actions can we take to ensure that diverse lived experiences are at the table and being considered? And how do we appreciate, center, and learn from different voices, lived experiences in this process? We move on to equity and consider how we go beyond the current norms of our sector by recognizing a broad range of voices and lived experiences in all aspects of our organization. We ask ourselves what systemic barriers are being faced by individuals from underrepresented groups and what impactful measures are being implemented by our organization to address those barriers. Under accessibility, we consider the physical, architectural, technological, informational, communication, and attitudinal barriers, and anything else really, that is the result of a policy or practice that could hinder the full and equal participation in our organization of persons with any kind of impairment, including physical, mental, intellectual, cognitive, learning, communication, or sensory? What can we put in place to remove these barriers to better facilitate full and equitable participation? And lastly, our leading to belonging. We ask ourselves, do individuals involved with the organization feel empowered to achieve their full potential within the context of their role with the organization or in the organization? So what's next for us? How are we enacting the ideal framework? Well, we are developing content on episodic disabilities using the framework for employment, business, and management programs in post-secondary education to integrate into their course material. We are developing an online training for HR practitioners on the ideal framework as it pertains to episodic disabilities, especially mental health conditions and long-haul COVID in the workplace from an intersectional perspective. We are raising awareness of the ideal framework throughout our networks and community and will develop further training and workplace implementation tools. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or would like to discuss the ideal framework, please contact me, Melissa E. at realizecanada.org. Thank you.